Welcome, everybody. It's our great pleasure to have Ruth Longmuir with us. I was having a conversation with a couple of my students who both happen to be Church of Scotland trainee ministers a couple of weeks ago, and saying, because I know they both have connections with homeless charities, what's happening during COVID with so many of the groups closing. And they both said confidently, oh yes, Bethany Christian Trust are still going there, sorting everything. Ruth is going to talk to us a bit about the realities of supporting the homeless during COVID, and especially over the past winter. The title of her talk is Homelessness, COVID, and Bethany Christian Trust. She's worked with the Bethany Christian Trust for almost 10 years and is the manager of the Care Van and the Welcome Centre, two projects that were actually both mentioned in dispatches by my Church of Scotland trainee minister friends. Two projects that support people who are rough sleeping in Edinburgh. The Care Van operates every evening and also on 5 lunchtimes a week. And the Welcome Centre is a 24-hour service providing emergency accommodation for people who would otherwise be sleeping rough. Through the staff team and a wide variety of specialist support and advice services, they aim to find more suitable accommodation for someone as quickly as possible. So that's just to give you a very short introduction to her work. But Ruth is going to give us at much greater length and in much more detail an insight into what they do and how they are keeping poverty as much at bay as possible in Edinburgh at the moment. Thanks, Ruth.
Great, thank you very much. Just bear with me and I will share my screen. I have a presentation which I will go through. There we go. Hopefully you can all see that. So I work for Bethany Christian Trust, and the two projects that I work with are the Welcome Centre and the Care Van. So I'm going to tell you a bit about Bethany Christian Trust in general to start with, and then focus in on the Welcome Centre and in particular what has happened in the past year or so because of COVID. So Bethany Christian Trust began in Leith in 1983. It was started by Alan Berry and his wife Anne. Alan was the minister of South Leith Baptist Church, and he was really responding to the need that he saw literally on the doorstep of the church. And over the years, in the past 38 years that Bethany's been in existence, it has grown a lot in terms of the different types of projects that it runs, and also in the locations. So having grown out of Leith, it is now based all across Scotland. So first of all, I have a short video which was made for the 35th anniversary of the charity, and I think it gives a really good kind of overview of all the work that we're involved in.
To have somewhere to stay is absolutely imperative. We take for granted the fact we can go back home, we open the door, we've got a bed to lie on, we've got a kitchen to cook. Having a home is not a luxury. Having a home is, for human beings, a necessity. We need somewhere that we can call home. In this country, we've sadly seen a terrific number of homes breaking up. I became minister here in 1976 and had been working here for about 7 years when I became increasingly aware of the fact that people were arriving at the church door and saying regularly, I've got nowhere to stay, I've got no food, I need money. I was becoming increasingly concerned that there was a disconnect between what I was saying in the pulpit and what was happening actually at the church door.
We had this great idea of having a house that could be run as an extended family. We wanted to make it a place where people could feel that they belonged and where the good aspects of home could be shared with them.
Anne and I gathered another 2 people with us, and during the period between 1981 and 1983, we set up the Bethany Christian Trust, and we began looking for somewhere to do this work that we thought needed to be done. The building opened on the 4th of April 1983, and we were able to move in at that stage, but there was a lot of work needed to be done. The church, right from day one, were very supportive. Some of the church members actually gave interest-free loans. Others were very regular in helping with seamstress stuff. There was a man who came in very regularly to peel potatoes. All of these things were very practical.
You were doing what you felt God had asked you to do, but it was very much learning on the job. Homelessness was maybe the presenting problem, but there were all sorts of factors too. So we were dealing with complicated people that we maybe hadn't really any experience with.
We had 28 people, ranging from people with drink problems, drug problems. They had mental health issues. Some of them had come out of prison. Some had flown their own country and were actually here as refugees. And if you put all these 28 together and then think that you can run it like a family, it's not easy. It was a very complicated and exciting period.
People have sometimes asked why we chose the name Bethany. We wanted the hostel to feel like a home, and that was the name of the home in the Bible, in the village of Bethany, where Jesus was shown kindness. And over the years, that has been something that Bethany's staff have done. And sometimes people have said it's been a new experience for them, experiencing kindness, because they'd had the experience of being hurt, and this was someone where they felt valued and cared for.
There's no doubt that the human aspect of this story is the most important bit. One of the very exciting things is to see somebody who has come in their life is in a real mess, and they land up actually getting sorted out and going on to become a member of staff. And one such person is John Rogers, who actually is a director, and he came with a major drink problem. He should have been thrown out many times because he didn't pay his rent, because he came back drunk, but we stuck in with him, and he became a Christian, and he hasn't drunk for many, many years. And so it's exciting to talk to somebody like John and see that it does work. Now, I wish that we could say that we have a 100% success rate. We don't. But the fact is that we've seen enough people helped, either in small increments or in large ways, that it's worthwhile, and it's certainly worth doing.
For me, I think that I always want Bethany to be focused on people. I think, that is the thing, that the bricks and mortar and programs are wonderful, but that is one of the good things about Bethany staff, that they have a heart for people.
You're giving people opportunity, and that's what it's all about. Nobody's a lost cause.
There we go. So hopefully that gives you a good overview of the various projects that Bethany has, and also kind of the motivation behind the whole charity and behind each of the projects as well. It's very much an expression of our faith and our desire to love people, and just as Jesus would have done. That's our whole motivation for doing this. So Bethany has 3 different strands to its work. The first one is homelessness prevention, which very much does or aims to do, as its name suggests, and that is to prevent homelessness in the first place. So it's a whole range of community-based projects, including drop-ins, community education classes, family residential holidays, community meals for people. There's a project called Connect to Community, which helps people who are coming out of prison. Passing the Baton is a befriending project, and there's also a community recovery programme called Bridge to Freedom. And then the second one is crisis intervention, which is the one that I work in. So it's really about helping people in that moment of crisis when they become homeless and on the street. So under that division sits the care van, which provides food to people, the Welcome Centre providing emergency accommodation, Bethany House and Bethany Christian Centre, and Ann Hope House, which are 3 residential units. And there's a social furniture project as well called Gateway. And then finally, we aim to help people as they come out of the other side of homelessness. And that's with housing and support so that they can remain in that housing. So there's a young person's unit in West Lothian called Caris Court, where they support people who are aged 16 to 25. There's various like supported housing projects and Bethany Homes, which are actual flats that Bethany runs. So there's a project in Edinburgh, Fife, a new one in Aberdeen, Glasgow, and Dumfries as well. And then Bethany's part of the Housing First consortium in Edinburgh. You might have heard of the phrase Housing First. It's a project whereby people are given a house and then basically as much support as they need to be able to maintain that house. And it's been very successful in other countries with helping people who are kind of in long-term homelessness. I wanted to say a little bit about homelessness to kind of give you a bit of context as well. So in Scotland, in 2019-2020, there were 36,855 households who made a homeless application to the local authority. So these are people who went along to their local council and said, "I'm homeless, can you help me?" In Edinburgh, that number was 3,491. And Shelter Scotland estimates that every 17 minutes, a household becomes homeless in Scotland. So if you think, while I'm speaking, there'll be another household become homeless, and then by the end of the meeting tonight, there'll be another household has become homeless. There's lots of different reasons as to why people become homeless. The most common reason that's given is a relationship breakdown, and often that would be the kind of final straw to somebody actually being asked to leave the house. There might be a lot of other reasons behind there, such as somebody having poor mental health, poor physical health, perhaps lost employment or lost benefit income for some reason, other financial difficulties like being in debt or rent arrears, or addictions as well. That can be a reason too. The whole housing problem is made more difficult in Edinburgh because there's a housing shortage at the moment. I think across all kind of levels of housing in Edinburgh, there's quite a stretch at the moment. So house prices, you might know, are quite high. My friend was telling me yesterday that currently houses are going for 15 to 20% above the asking price. So it's a very expensive housing market. Renting is expensive in Edinburgh as well. There's a lot of pressure there. And then filtering all the way down, like council houses are very hard to come by. If somebody's homeless, it would take them at least 18 months to be allocated a permanent council tenancy. People are put into temporary accommodation before that, but temporary accommodation can be a couple of years until somebody gets something longer term. So there's just quite a lot of pressure on the system in general, and it just kind of compounds the whole problem and makes it more difficult. So Bethany's response to rough sleeping, one thing that Bethany has done is they've run a shelter in Edinburgh since 1996, a seasonal shelter over the coldest months of the year. Previously it was called the Care Shelter, and then this winter it's become the Rapid Reaccommodation Welcome Centre, or Welcome Centre for short. So I now want to tell you a bit about that transition and how it's come about because of COVID. So this is what the care shelter used to look like when it was in church halls. It used to move around different church halls on a nightly basis, and it was mats on the floor, a very basic service for people, but it got them in outside from the freezing temperatures and provided somewhere for people to stay. And there was lots of support provided from the staff team and also from various services who came along and visited to provide support to people. There's a 2-course meal cooked by teams of volunteers from different churches. And Rab, who's here tonight, knows all about that because he is our volunteer who helps with organising that rota for the catering teams. And then a couple of years ago, Borgi Darai Stenhouse Church came to us with the offer of a building that they were no longer using called Diadem, which was on the corner of Chester Avenue and Gorgie Road. And so we were able to be based there and not move around the different church halls anymore. So here, this is a picture of the inside of Diadem. There was space for 75 people. You can see that they've all got raised beds now instead of mats on the floor. And there's purpose-built shower and toilet facilities. And there were different things we were able to do just with being based in one place, such as have a library and more clothes donations available for people. So things were going really well in Diadem. We were pleased to have kind of been able to take the service forward and to be able to run it like this. And then, of course, last year, COVID came onto the horizon, and we brought in various measures such as moving the beds further apart, all your kind of usual measures, wearing gloves, lots of hand sanitizing, encouraging people to wash hands, taking people's temperatures, that kind of thing. But it became evident that what we really needed was to move to a different building, one where people could have their own rooms so that they too could stay home, as the government was suggesting. And so we moved to this wonderful building, the old Waverley Hotel on Princes Street, and we extended the winter season into July to cover the first lockdown period. So we had space for 70 people across 6 floors of rooms. We partnered with City of Edinburgh Council, who provided staffing in the hotel during the day alongside a Bethany team leader. And then we had the usual Bethany night shift team working overnight. In the 13 weeks that we were based in the Old Waverley, we saw 486 different people come through the doors. So it was very much people stayed for a short period of time and then moved on to something more suitable. As I touched on before, support is a really big part of the service. So as well as the professional staff team, we also have a number of visiting partner services who come along regularly to meet with guests and provide advice and support to them. So last season we had 23 different services, and it ranges from lots of different medical services like a GP, CPN, practice nurse, harm reduction nurses, to people who will help with employment, such as crisis, other homeless services such as street work and Cyrenians, legal support from Shelter Scotland and the Civil Legal Assistance Office. And we also have link workers too, who are a link between the council and Bethany, and they're able to do homeless assessments, which is a council process. It's something that people have to go through in order to get into temporary accommodation. But they're able to do that at the Welcome Centre, which is really great, instead of requiring people to travel to a council office somewhere. So this is one of the rooms in the Old Waverley. So once the shelter had closed there was lots of discussions over the summer about what was going to happen next. And these were discussions that were had at a national level. There's an organisation called the Everyone Home Collective, which is a group of about 40 different organisations involved in homelessness, including Bethany, and a route map was produced for night shelters, basically to transition from being a traditional night shelter service to becoming a welcome centre, effectively ending the use of night shelters in Scotland for good is the plan, and the plan wouldn't be to go back to how it was before. So we've very much taken the best of the care shelter over the years, and then the learning from the hotel, and kind of packaged that with a reinvigorated focus on moving people into accommodation. And that is how we have kind of taken the Welcome Centre forward this season. So this is where we're currently based, in the Haymarket Hub Hotel, which is just opposite Haymarket Station. So we opened there on the 5th of October and are based there until the 3rd of May. So it's a great place to be, actually. It's a better layout than the old Waverley, which makes it a bit easier to manage, and things are going really well there. This is one of the rooms. So on occasion it's been quite busy. We've got 59 rooms, so just over 60 people if we've got some couples in. It's actually really quiet today. We've had a lot of people move on, so we're down to about 25 guests at the moment, which is great. We work really closely with City of Edinburgh Council to provide move-on accommodation for people, and we've actually now got a housing officer based in the Welcome Centre in the mornings to help with that process, which is really good. The aim is that people will only stay for a few nights, but there's quite a lot of flexibility within that. So, for example, somebody might turn up at the door, and we would always call the council to see if this person's known to the council. Do they have alternative accommodation? If not, and they need to stay with us, we would ask about risk, so that we can manage that safely. So it's possible that when we make that call that actually there's a bed available for them somewhere else and they can move on to that place straight away. So therefore somebody might come to us and access the service but never actually stay a night in the hotel. The other option is that someone, the other kind of end of the scale is that someone would come to us and it might be better for them to stay with us for a period of time. So, for example, we have a young Polish man who's staying with us just now. He's actually really well known to us. He's used the care shelter for about 5 or 6 years. He's got an alcohol addiction, but he's actually sober at the moment, and he's managing to stay sober at the Welcome Centre, which is great. His overall aim would be to go to Bethany Christian Centre, which is a recovery unit for men with addictions. But there's various problems around his eligibility for accommodation and with not being from the UK. So it can take a wee bit of time to sort through those things and to figure out whether he is eligible. We're confident that eventually he will be found to be eligible, but it's taken some time. So he's been with us a number of months so far, and I think it will take a little bit longer, but it'll be worth it if the outcome is that he's able to move into Bethany Christian Centre. That would be an excellent outcome. So of the 18 weeks of operation so far at the Haymarket Hub, we've seen 589 different guests come through the door. So it's very much people staying for a short period of time and then hopefully moving on to somewhere more suitable for them. So it's a service that really works. In terms of the future, we're not entirely sure what the future holds for the Welcome Centre, but the council certainly support this model of working, and as do we, and we would be keen to see it continue in the future. I think there will always be a need for emergency accommodation, hopefully not on the scale that we see at the moment, but I think there's always people becoming homeless all the time, and so having that place for someone to go before they move on to somewhere a little bit longer term is always going to need to be there. COVID has brought obviously huge changes for the service, but huge improvements as well. It's gone from being a service that was open for 9.5 hours each night to being one that's open 24 hours a day. It's given people their own rooms, ensuite facilities, 3 meals a day. So it's an access to support as well during the day, greater access to support, because services are more willing to come out and visit during the day rather than during the night, as I'm sure you can understand. There's been a real effort as well in Edinburgh to move people inside off the streets during both of the lockdowns that we've had, and they've been very successful as well. So currently, from pre-COVID numbers of maybe about 120 people sleeping rough each night in Edinburgh, the estimate now would be around about 10. And those people who are still out are very much kind of harder to reach people. There's a couple of them have been homeless for like 10 to 20 years, and quite severe mental health issues that mean that they are less likely to accept the accommodation that's on offer to them. But really good relationships being built up with people from various services, and services really working together to try and move people indoors. So a lot of good partnership working has come out of this as well, and a real desire, I think, to move towards ending rough sleeping, and some real successes in that. So hopefully it's something that can be built upon as we come out of this lockdown, and for the future, and that we'll see a lasting effect of this in our city. So that's all I have in terms of my presentation. But I'd be very happy to take any questions that you might have.